You describe in that letter a party that you go to at Robert Jackson's, of which you sat at a table with Chief Nazi prosecutor, or Chief Russian prosecutor Rudenko.
Yes.
Last night was Justice Jackson's party. Very exciting, very unexpected. All the prosecutors and judges were there, and it was fascinating. Everyone met and talked and danced with everyone else. And dinner I had at the same table with the Russian chief prosecutor Rudenko and his wife, who told me not to smoke so much, that I was too young. At first there was just 5 of us at the table. Later Mrs. Douglas, Jackson's secretary, sat down, and she, swathed in furs, jewels, long dress, etc., discussed the homecoming of her only son, who had been in the Pacific for 2 years, with Mrs. Rudenko, who had no makeup, matronly, and it was a simple black dress. Fantastic. That was the most splendid part of it. The English, French, Russians, Americans, all jumbled up and really mixing. And then, of course, it was fun to talk to all these people that either were just names or one had only had worked connections with. Just to show you how good it was, I shall list the names of some, because just the names are out of this world. Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, General Alexandrov, General Rudenko, Francis Biddle, Justice and Lady Lawrence. I'm going to blow this one. Devibes, is it?
Devibes.
Devibes, the judge.
The French judge.
Like a fairy tale. Perhaps evenings like that can be dull. I always thought they would be, but everyone unbends, drinks, and it is gay, and not the measured small talk of one other larger party I had been to. That was a cocktail party, and everyone stood around stiffly and drank and talked politely, and so on and so forth. What a show! Yeah,
what a show it was. It was.
How did you get invited? Was this? Had you been invited to other parties?
Yes, and other events. Well, because I was now doing research, and so I got around a lot more, met a lot more people. One day, we were all not many in our office were invited to, it was Christopher Dodd, the senator at that time. No, he must have been a lawyer there. He must have been a lawyer.
Yeah, Thomas Dodd.
Thomas Dodd. Right. Thomas Dodd. And he had use of the Hitler yacht, and he invited us all for a cruise on Hitler's yacht one day. I mean, things like that are sort of unbelievable. Yeah, Thomas Dodd.
So the party itself, I mean, the fact that you sat at the same table with Rudenko,
right,
his wife, and Elsie Douglas,
right.
It's a table of honor.
It's a table of honor, and well, I think people were all mixed up, and that contrast between Mrs. Rudenko, the mother, and Mrs. Douglas, the mother. It's what they had in common: one in furs and one without. It was interesting. It was very interesting for a 22-year-old girl to see all this.
Was there there probably wasn't many opportunities for you as a research person to be with the judges?
No, not the judges. Not the judges.
Biddle and Lawrence?
No, not the judges. More the lawyers. The lawyers who needed work done in English. But my boss, in charge of research, Dr. Kempner, knew everybody, and everybody came to him for information and advice. And through him, we met everybody. We met everybody. Sooner or later got to his office. Yeah.
Did you have any interfacing with the Russians?
Yes, lots. Because you see, when I'd been in Washington, I'd been working with Russian. So I knew the language a little bit. And so I could talk to them a little bit, not much, but enough maybe to have a little social conversation. So I would try to mix with the Russians as much as I could. One night I met a Russian soldier who had come down to Nuremberg to photograph the, oh, that's the next story I'm going to send you, the story called The Russian that I wrote. Anyway, and he and I met, I don't know how, but we did. And we danced, and we talked, a little bit in Russian, a little bit in German, no English, just German and Russian. And we danced, and when all this was over, and he would, no dipping little crackers, a big slab of black bread and butter and cheese, and that's what we ate, and drank a lot of vodka. Anyway, he took me home, and he said to his driver, "Wait." And we went into my billet, and he kissed me goodnight, and I thought to myself, "Who? What American girl is being kissed by a Russian soldier tonight?" And we arranged to meet the next day at the Grand Hotel. And so the next day I went down to the Grand Hotel. By then, a friend of mine whom I knew in America had also taken the test. My husband knows her, that's Erna Miller. If he would wake up, he might. He might remember her. Anyway, Erna, my friend, whom I was with at the Grand Hotel that day, said, "Oh, he'll never show up. He'll never show up. They'll have talked to him, keep away from her. Americans and Germans don't mix. Americans and Russians don't mix." But about a half an hour late, without any excuses, he marches in with a bunch of his friends, and we spend the afternoon talking and drinking. And that was that day, an evening. And he then said he had to go back to Berlin, which is where he was stationed. He'd just come down for the weekend to photograph the trial. Then he had to go back. So I assumed he was back. And the next day, an English journalist whom I knew, whom I did not like particularly, said, "Come have lunch with me at," I forget the name of the place, it was where the journalists were billeted. And I said, "Okay."
By the way, that was the Stein Castle?
I think so. The Faber.
Faber.
The Faber Castle, Faber Castell, I think, Greg. And I went off with Ernest, was his name, and we had lunch. And after lunch, we went and played ping pong. And while we were playing ping pong, the door opened, and Sergei, that was the Russian photographer's name, walked in with a bunch of his friends, just looked around, walked right out again, and I never saw him again after that. I was sorry. I don't have his address now, but at one time he gave it to me, and he said, "If you ever come to Berlin, look me up." And that would have been exciting, but after this little incident, I thought, no. Yeah, it really spoiled me. It was so interesting. It spoiled me for almost anything, any work I would do afterwards. I mean, at 22, when you're very impressionable, led a fairly sheltered life to, and the good and the bad. To see a man grovel in the dirt for a cigarette butt, see villages, towns, everything bombed out, living in a place that had been requisitioned, some family had just been evicted, and there's where we stayed. And we who ate at the Grand Hotel, that was interesting.
Thank you so much.